Hello, it is early July 2022 and I'm in North Carolina's Doughton Park for a backpacking adventure. Nestled directly off the Blue Ridge Parkway, Doughton Park is a real gem of a destination. It has beautiful long-range views from the top of the ridge lines, crystal creeks that flow through the deep cove forests, as well as historical structures that give a glimpse into a past time and a past life. Doughton is also a special place for me personally because this was the location of my first solo multi-night backpacking trip many moons ago. My biggest challenges on this trip are most likely going to be the heat and the rain. Forecasts are for mid to upper 80s, perhaps even the 90s each day, and there's a greater than 50% chance of rain every day after today. It's just that time of year where the big afternoon thunderstorms roll through regularly. I've got a big climb to start out my trip today, 2,500 plus feet. I'm looking forward to getting started, and it's time to hit the trail. After a good hour plus of strong hiking, I realized I was actually going the wrong direction. I've been coming along the Flat Rock Ridge Trail, and I needed to be on the Cedar Ridge Trail. So I'm now retracing my steps back to the area that I started so I can take the turn off along the Cedar Ridge Trail and get back on track towards the Doughton campgrounds. I'm now back on track, breaking off a grassy gap trail, heading up on Cedar Ridge Trail. The Cedar Ridge Trail runs roughly north, parallel between the boundary of the Doughton Recreation Area to the west, left, and the Thurman Chatham Game Lands to the east, right. Heading to check out the Brinegar Cabin. And there is the Brinegar Cabin. The family lived there for 60 years. A pretty view right up above the Brinegar Cabin. Back to the Brinegar Cabin intersection. I finished up Cedar Ridge Trail. Going to hop on Bluff Mountain Trail, which will take me 1.5 miles to the campground. The Doughton Park meadows have started. Many more where these came from, and some bigger views up ahead as well. There are a herd of deer out here around the campfire circle area. They're just recreating. Maybe they're about to get a bonfire going. There they go. Oh, they're still looking. Oh, there he goes. Hey, deer. There they are. I won't get any closer. 3 deer. Cool to see. Here's a look around one of the camp circles at Doughton Park. I've only seen one other person actually camping out here. There's been a few handful of RV campers, but not too many tent or hammockers, it doesn't seem. I'm gonna grab a spot and get set up. It's almost dark. Home sweet home. 37 is a spot for me. The sites are pretty close together out here, but no one's in them. I would estimate at least 100 open sites tonight on the Friday of July 4th weekend. On this trip, I'm using the Doughton Park map, available on the Doughton Park website. Let's take a look at the map for day 1. I started at the parking on Longbottom Road, mistakenly followed the Flat Rock Ridge Trail for about 2 miles before retracing my steps, then coming the right direction down Grassy Gap Trail to the Cedar Ridge Trail, which brought me up to the Brinegar Cabin. I then connected with the Bluff Mountain Trail and spent the night in the Doughton Park campground. Day 1 was about 10 miles, but if you do it right, it'll be closer to 6. Day 1 has been a more difficult day than I anticipated due to the extra 4 miles or so I added on, but it was a beautiful day and all's well that ends well. Got to see the Brinegar Cabin. It's cool to think about the lives and the lifestyles that used to go on like that, and now I've got a awesome relaxing site up here in the campground area. I'm gonna get some dinner in me, and it'll be time to settle in. That'll be the end of day 1. Good night. In the late 1800s, Martin Brinegar paid $200 for the 125-acre farm on which he would build his cabin. Good morning. Made it to day 2 in Doughton Park, North Carolina. Last night started and ended very relaxing, but in the middle had a family come up and set up camp very close to me around 10:30, 11 p.m. and almost felt like a movie scene because every opportunity that they had to make noise they took, and they rolled up on one of them had a loud motorcycle, there was a couple barking dogs, a crying baby, music playing, phones ringing, the whole 9 yards. So like I said, it felt like a movie scene that I was in at the time, but they got set up and settled in, and the rest of the night was relaxing. It's gonna be a warm day today. As soon as I step out of the shade, I'll be in the direct sunlight, but I've got lots of good views to look towards across the top of the ridge here along the Blue Ridge Parkway, and then once I start to drop down, I should be in the shade and the trees after that. So I'm ready to hit the trail. The first part of my day will be along the Bluff Mountain Trail, which runs concurrently with the Mountains to Sea Trail, right along the Blue Ridge Parkway. The trail runs right through a big cow pasture. Doesn't look like they're running any cows through here now, based on the length of the grass and the lack of paddies, but I have walked through here before when there were cows. This is the Bluffs Restaurant and Park Store. I've actually never been here while it was open before. I think they just reopened it a year or 2 ago. It was closed for quite some time. There's an old hotel here, right off the parkway. I think it's pretty much been closed down, which is unfortunate because it's a beautiful area. A short walk past the hotel is the Wildcat Rocks overlook. As a wildcat myself, of course, I had to come check this out. But this is looking down into the Basin Cove area. Somewhere down at the bottom is the primitive campground, and then right below us is the Caudill Cabin, which I may check out tomorrow if the weather permits. Let's take a 360-degree look around. Now, Doughton Park really has the views. Big meadows, open hiking. Only a couple places in North Carolina really get this much exposed hiking, like at Doughton. Clouds are starting to come in today. We'll see what kind of rain they bring, if any. There's a big old picnic today at the Doughton picnic area, and they even offered the ranger plate. A little ways off the Bluff Mountain Trail, along the Bluff Ridge Trail, is a shelter. There's no camping allowed there. I guess it's just like a day shelter. It does have a good view from the front porch. Bluff Mountain Trail views. Alligator Back Overlook. Behind me is Bluff Mountain with the cliff faces on the side. And there is looking down into the Basin Cove, Doughton Recreation Area. Won't be much longer now before I start dropping down that direction. I enjoyed a late lunch at the intersection of the MST and Grassy Gap Trail. I'm now going to be heading about 5 miles, mostly down the Grassy Gap Trail towards the primitive campsite. The clouds are continuing to build out there. As I continue to descend down Grassy Gap Trail towards the primitive campsite, I'll be coming into the Basin Cove area, which from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s was a thriving community with more than 50 families. In 1916, disaster struck. Nearly 2 feet of rain fell over a 72-hour period, wiping away the vast majority of structures in the Basin Cove community due to the flooding and landslides. Down to the primitive camping area. When I picked up my permit this morning, the ranger said that I was the only one permitted down here. Maybe someone came later on in the day, but sounds like it'd be pretty private for the most part. It's a big space, so I'm going to look around and pick my spot. I walked through the campsite, which is massive, and I'm going to pick number 7. 7 and 8 are kind of down here by themselves. If anyone else does come in, I figured they'd probably stop at maybe 1 or 2. And there'll be plenty of room down here for anyone who does come. It's a big area. Doughton Park is named after Robert L. Doughton, a local congressman from North Carolina who played a key role in creation of the Blue Ridge Parkway. Let's take a look at the map for day 2. I started at the Doughton Park campground, followed the Bluff Mountain Trail along the Blue Ridge Parkway, checked out the Wildcat Rocks Overlook, continued on Bluff Mountain Trail to the Bluff Ridge Trail to see the shelter, back on the Bluff Mountain Trail around the top of Doughton Park to connect with the Grassy Gap Fire Trail, which took me down to the primitive campsite. Day 2 was about 10 miles. Day 2 of my backpacking adventure in the Doughton Recreation Area has been a great day of hiking. Beautiful long-range views up on the top of the ridgeline and thick, deep forest down here in the bottom. Camped right by a rushing stream, and the weather held off for me throughout the day. There has been some thunder rumbling here in the last few minutes, so I'm going to start getting everything ready for the rain that may come through. As long as nothing crazy happens, that'll be the end of day 2. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 3, my backpacking adventure in Doughton Park. Had a relaxing night last night. Some rain came through, but nothing too bad. And my plan today is to hike up to the Caudill Cabin. There has been a lot of dark gray rain clouds in the sky this morning, so if the rain starts to come down, I might not make it the whole way, but it should be a beautiful hike. The trail crosses the stream something like 20 times on the way there, and I'm looking forward to exploring that area of the park. It's time to hit the trail. The Basin Creek Union Baptist Church, of which the foundations remain today, was one of the few structures to survive the 1916 floods. Most members of the Basin Cove community escaped during the beginning of the flooding and landslides, but 15-year-old Alice Caudill, who was in the late term of her first pregnancy, along with her mother and young cousin, were caught in a landslide and did not survive. Along the Basin Creek Trail, a still standing chimney from the old Basin Cove community. Another historic artifact, an old millstone. First crossing of Basin Creek. Many more to come. The water level looks pretty reasonable, so hope I won't have any wet feet, but we will see. Second major crossing. Third major crossing of Basin Creek. Fourth major crossing. This is a beautiful, unspoiled waterway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. Number 6. More old remains. These chimneys are between 100 to 150 years old. 7. Another old homestead. 8. Crossing, number 9. Some ruins up on the hill and some thunder brewing in the distance. This is a little one, but we'll count it as double digits, number 10. History abounds along the Basin Creek Trail. Had I been making this hike on a Sunday afternoon 125 years ago, I would have been passing by neighbor after neighbor. Another small one, number 11. Number 12. Lucky number 13. I know for a fact there are rainbow trout in this waterway because I used to bring a hand line out here and catch some of them along the way. Caudill Cabin. The Caudill Cabin is still surprisingly weatherproof. If I remember correctly, it was about 15 people that lived in this one-room cabin. Martin Caudill, his wife, and their children. Many chimneys along the trail today, and this is what they used to look like with the house attached. It is fitting that I made it to the Caudill Cabin during a rainstorm, considering the impact that rain has had on the history of this area. On July 16th, 1916, during the flooding, Martin and Janie Caudill hiked up to the top of Wildcat Rocks, along with 10 of their children. I can't imagine hiking out of this bowl in the best of conditions, much less in the middle of the night with torrential rain, leading 10 children in a race against your lives. I didn't film the last 2 crossings on the way in because it was raining and had gotten so dark in the woods they weren't showing up. But this is crossing number 15, the last one before the cabin. And crossing number 14. From here it should be a little under 3 miles back to the campsite, backtracking along the Basin Creek Trail. The water system looks a little different than it did when I passed by a couple hours ago, thanks to all the rain that came through. There's been so many beautiful blooming flowers on this trip. Whites and pinks splashed all across the forest. An awesome bright salamander here along the trail. The rain must have brought him out. He's a tiny little fellow, maybe 2 inches long at the most. Home sweet home. Made it back to the primitive campsite. Very fun day today. 30 stream crossings. The 15 on the way down were much more challenging than the 15 on the way up. It's never fun by itself to get caught in a rainstorm, but to arrive at the Caudill Cabin in the heavy downpour definitely fit the historical narrative of Basin Cove, so I couldn't be mad at it. I'm almost back to my hammock, so I'm gonna get some dry clothes on, get dinner in me, and then settle in for what I hope to be a relaxing and restful evening. That'll be end of day 3. Good night. Let's take a look at the map for day 3. I started at the primitive campsite and day hiked along the Basin Creek Trail up to Caudill Cabin, and then right on back down to the primitive campsite. Day 3 was about 7.5 miles. The Caudill family were one of the first to settle in Basin Cove. Harrison Caudill did his part to populate the area with 22 children. One of those, Martin, built the Caudill Cabin in 1890. Good morning. Made it to day 4 of my backpacking adventure in Doughton Park. Had another calm night last night. No rain came through, but it was so humid that nothing really dried out from yesterday. I have a short day today, only about 1.5 miles to get back to the trailhead, so I'm enjoying a slow morning, getting some breakfast in me, getting camp packed up, and then I'll have time to walk out. On this trip, there hasn't been anyone else camping down here in this big primitive campsite area. Of course, I enjoyed the privacy, but I would like to see a place as beautiful and awesome as Doughton get some more visitation, so definitely don't feel afraid to come by to the primitive campsite of Doughton. I'm going to finish up breakfast, get camp packed up, and it'll be time to hit the trail. Let's take a look at the map for day 4. Starting at the primitive campsite, I'll follow the Grassy Gap Trail down to the parking lot, and that'll be about 1.5 miles for a trip total of approximately 29 miles. I'm going to try to provide a sense of how large the primitive campsite here is. Off in the trees there are numbers 8 and 7. There's campsite 5 and campsite 6. Rounding the bend of Grassy Gap, there's campsite 4, and campsite 3 is back a little in the woods away. And here is campsite 1, and back a little ways there is campsite 2. So a really, really large camping area down here at the primitive sites. I forgot this morning, but today is actually July 4th. Happy birthday, America. Woo! 4 days in Doughton Park in the books. I had a great time out here, really enjoyed exploring this gem of North Carolina. The relaxation and solitude was exactly what I was looking for. There were beautiful views from the ridges and meadows at the top of the park, thick, deep forest to hike through in the coves, and lots of historical structures and sites to enjoy along the way. Doughton is a place that's great for car campers, day hikers, or backpackers. come out and check it out. Until next time, thanks for tuning in to Lane's World. Goodbye.